Now, I'm not saying that JD Vance off the Pope, but look at me. Okay, so you're telling me on Easter Sunday, on the day that God's son Jesus de Nazareth has risen, the devil himself, JD Vance, walks into the Pope's church for a meeting.
So the Pope dies right after JD Vance's visit with him?
The Pope passed away 4 hours after shaking his hand. He met one of the devil's disciples and then died.
So the Pope passed away after meeting JD Vance. He shook his hand and then died.
And speaking of JD Vance, I don't know if y'all remember that video I made a while ago saying if we tried hard enough, we could push the rhetoric that Trump is the Antichrist. Like, there's enough evidence, there's enough rhetoric. We could do it. I think we also could convince everyone that JD Vance killed the Pope.
Back when I lived in his district, I visibly remember voting against JD Vance in 2022. I was so upset when he won, and then a couple years later, he becomes our vice president. Flash forward to 2025, the entire world now thinks he is the Antichrist and responsible for Pope Francis's demise.
The Pope passing away on Easter 24 hours after meeting JD Vance is like Santa Claus passing away on Christmas 24 hours after meeting the Grinch.
JD Vance, why you have to go and see the Pope on Easter? Now we waking up to the news.
So today is the 23rd. It's a Wednesday, 23rd of April 2025 in my country, Uganda. And the whole world literally knew about the death of the Pope on the 21st of April, which was Easter Monday. Now, when it comes to my country, Uganda, when such big people die, we usually hear rumors saying, oh, that person died 3 days ago, 1 week ago, but they have been waiting to release the news in public. That's what I was also thinking until I landed on these videos, on these reactions from these Black Americans. I found out that actually on Easter, which was the 20th, on Sunday, the Pope was live and kicking and he wasn't sick at all. And then after meeting this guy over here, the next day he dies. Isn't that really suspicious? So, you guys, this is something that most of us, we are having many questions with less answers. I want us to watch these few clips from other people who have reacted on this incident and let me know what you think about it. And by the way, if you're seeing me for the very first time, my name is Sumi and I hope you do consider subscribing on the channel for more reaction videos like this one.
The Pope passing away one day after Easter Sunday is crazy. But when you jump down that rabbit hole and you dig up that last Pope prophecy, that might scare the hell out of you. So the prophecy says that this Pope, Pope Francis that died, might be the last Pope that we have. So in this prophecy, someone predicted every Pope from 1143 to the Pope that just passed away. But get this, after Pope Francis, the Pope that just passed away, the last one says Judgment Day. And check this out. It's a place right outside the Vatican called St. Paul's Basilica. In this place, they have every picture of every Pope. But after St. Francis, it's only one picture space left. You heard what I just said? After St. Francis, it's only one picture space left. And I'm about to hit you with some real spooky shit. But they said, after that last picture space is filled, it's the end of the world. Now you got to think about how things have been going since they opened that tomb. 2025 has been real crazy. Till this day, those prophecies have been correct. And listen to this. Pope John the 23rd said the end of the world will happen in 2,000 years plus Christ's life. You do the math. Pay attention.
JD Vance, why you have to go and see the Pope on Easter? Now we waking up to the news that this man is passed away. And everybody's looking at you like, why you have to go and shake his hands? Oh my God. Rest in peace to the Pope. I know a lot of people respected him and they are just grieving. But I'm also looking at the comments and people are like, yo, JD Vance, stay home. Stay home. You don't need to be going around shaking old people's head. That's what people are saying. That I was like, yo, these comments are wild. I'm just wondering, like, with him being gone now, who is going to replace him? Because it's only been what he died, I think, this morning. So it's only been a couple of hours, and they're talking about how he's gonna be buried in 15 days, I think they said. So in a couple of weeks. And then eventually they will replace him. So it'll be interesting to see who is the replacement. But rest in peace to the Pope. And JD Vance, stay home. Don't be going around shaking old people's hand.
So you mean to tell me that Pope Francis, an anti-Trump critic, his last private encounter, his last private meeting was with Vice President JD Vance, and hours later he died? He passed away? See, Pope Francis had been recovering from double pneumonia, and while he really didn't have all the energy to be participating in all of the formal events that the Vatican had planned for Saturday, he still made sure to muster the little bit of energy that he had to meet up with Vice President JD Vance for a meeting that only lasted a few minutes. He wanted to give off some good, Easter greetings, as well as let them know his final thoughts, and I do mean final thoughts, on the Trump administration. The information that I'm about to read off to you is coming from an article that can be found on USA.com. So the Pope and the Vatican officials have criticized several of the policies of President Donald Trump's administration, including his plans to deport millions of migrants from the United States and his widespread cut of foreign aid and domestic welfare programs. Francis has called the immigration crackdown a disgrace. Vance, who became Catholic in 2019, has cited medieval era Catholic teachings to try to justify the policy. So I guess he was trying to tell the Pope that there was religious reason for these mass deportations. I don't know. But the Pope rebutted the theological concept that Vance tried to use to defend the crackdown in an unusual open letter to the U.S. Catholic bishops about the Trump's administration in February, and called Trump's plan a major crisis for the United States. So even though this man was fighting double pneumonia, he couldn't even be present for the actual official duties for the Vaticans that they had planned for Saturday. He still made sure to have this meeting that only lasted a few minutes with Vice President JD Vance to let him know his final thoughts of how he feels about this administration, and then he passed away in his sleep in the early mornings. That's crazy.
And you know what? If I met JD Vance in person, I'd probably drop dead in a few hours too. Yeah, no, that just makes sense. I feel like if I were to see JD Vance in person, at the very least, it would take a couple of years off my lifespan. Because if he's not the Antichrist, at the very least, he is some supreme energy vampire, just sucking the life out of everybody. Just sucking the fun, sucking the life, all of it.
Honestly, I thought the Pope was already gone. I made a video about how I thought the Pope was already gone, and then a couple days later, he literally popped up. I said, wait, that's weird. You popped up as soon as I was starting to clock that you hadn't been in the public for a long time. I was like, he's for sure gone, because he was sick in the hospital for a long time. So I already thought he was gone. Then he got out, and then he was fine. But then JD Vance went and visited him, and now he's gone. That's crazy. That is insane. JD Vance is responsible for the Pope no longer being here. I don't care what anyone says. That is just some spooky shit. It must have been the vibes, the energy of that man. It must have just thrown the Pope's last energy that he had off. Just threw his last little bit of energy off, and he had to get up out of here. He said, yeah, that's enough demonic shit. Yeah. Crazy that JD Vance was one of the last people to see the Pope alive. What the fuck? Anyway, I already thought he was gone a couple weeks ago, but then he, made his little appearance, but now he's actually gone. I just think this is all really weird, honestly, but I don't know. Hopefully we get some info coming out of the Vatican. I want to know the secrets. So there's that.
How old is the Pope? He's 88 years old, and he tragically passed away today. How I'm trying to find the word. Fuck it, I'ma say it anyway. Pope Francis, right? Chilling at the young age of 88. Yes, sir. On a Sunday. Easter Sunday. He survived every Easter Sunday all the way from 1936. J.D. Vance. Oh my God. And in no way, shape, or form am I blaming J.D. Vance for the Pope's passing. But nigga, as soon as this administration took office, it's like a stinky fog just came over everybody. From what I'm hearing, the Pope lectured J.D. Vance on immigrants before he passed. Bro, the stock market's back down again. The fucking tariffs are up to 245%. And this nigga J.D. Vance met the Pope on Easter Sunday. And the Pope dies a day later. Like, what the?
Now, I'm not saying that J.D. Vance off the Pope, but look at me. Okay, so you're telling me on Easter Sunday, on the day that God's son Jesus de Nazareth has risen, the devil himself, J.D. Vance, walks into the Pope's church for a meeting. This has to be the biggest paradox like ever. And I think it was just like hours, like 4 hours after the Pope met J.D. Vance, he's gone to go tell the Lord in person about the bullshit that is going on earth right now. Wasn't J.D. Vance like arguing with the Pope before this on Twitter? Because the Pope didn't support Trump's administration's views specifically on immigration and mass deportation. And J.D. Vance, who by the way just became a Christian in 2019, feels like he knows more than the Pope. And he genuinely believes that, you know, mass deportation and religion goes hand in hand. He called them a disgrace. Hold on, I found an article. Mind you, the Pope had been recovering from double pneumonia. Sorry. The Pope and Vatican officials have criticized several of the policies of President Donald Trump's administration, including his plans to deport millions of migrants from the U.S. and his widespread cuts to foreign aid and domestic welfare programs. Did y'all even get to see the footage of J.D. Vance meeting the Pope? Like, it just felt awkward to watch. And I'm like, but what is like actually happening here? And then just like that, literally hours later, the Pope has gone to meet the Lord. If this doesn't prove to you that J.D. Vance is evil, I don't know what does. But in all seriousness, rest in peace to the Pope.
Honestly, I thought the Pope was already gone. Like, I made a video about how I thought the Pope was already gone, and then a couple days later, he literally popped up. I said, wait, that's weird. You popped up as soon as I was starting to clock that you hadn't been in the public for a long time. I was like, he's for sure gone, because he was sick in the hospital for a long time. So I already thought he was gone. Then he got out, and then he was fine. But then J.D. Vance went and visited him, and now he's gone. Like, that's crazy. Like, that is insane. J.D. Vance is responsible for the Pope no longer being here. I don't care what anyone says. That is just some spooky shit. It must have been the vibes, the energy of that man. It must have just thrown the Pope's last energy that he had off. Just threw his last little bit of energy off, and he had to get up out of here. He said, yeah, that's enough demonic shit. Yeah. Crazy that J.D. Vance was like one of the last people to see the Pope alive. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, I already thought he was gone a couple weeks ago, but then he, you know, made his little appearance, but now he's actually gone. I just think this is all really weird, honestly, but I don't know. Hopefully we get some info coming out of the Vatican. I want to know the secrets. So there's that.